Having been here for 8 years, I feel like I've developed quite a bit. Some of that is I've gone from sort of a small 18-year-old to being an adult, so the company has seen me through that. But then at the same time, the last few years we've been working on development plans and doing enriching courses, so it feels like I have grown as a person while I'm at it as well.
I started off as a designer working in mechanical engineering. I'm now a functional resource manager, so I've been given the opportunities to develop in certain areas. There's been multiple courses, opportunities, and some really good leadership from individuals around the business, whether that was intentional or unintentional, just being shown the opportunities and given the training, but also the exposure to do some of these activities.
Throughout my time at MBDA, I've had the opportunity to work on lots of different projects, work with lots of different people, which really helped me increase my technical knowledge. As I've moved from project to project, there's a lot of project-specific knowledge that I've accrued over the years.
Since I joined MBDA, I have developed hugely, and the company have been instrumental in that. One thing that really stands out for me is following my 5-year career break in 2008, MBDA were very willing to make adjustments in order to meet my own personal needs. I worked on reduced hours, my salary was competitive. The business absolutely recognised my value to them and therefore have generated a great deal of loyalty in me.
Since I joined 8 years ago, I developed massively due to support from the company, due to support from my managers over the years. I have now got responsibility for a team, which is progression through the 8 years that I've joined. And I've also developed a lot more technical knowledge, technical know-how and expertise in the field I'm working on.
Hello everyone, afternoon, and welcome to our first event in our series of events with Meet and Engage with us, MBDA. So hopefully you already know a bit about us, but if you don't, we're a leading defence organisation operating across the UK, operating across Europe and the rest of the world as well. So first of all, who am I? I'm Elsie. I'm an early careers recruitment advisor at MBDA. I've been here for about 2.5, coming to 3 years now. Specifically, I work in the early careers team, so looking at getting school leavers, university goers and graduates into our wonderful early careers roles. But we are joined here today with 3 wonderful panelists. Because I work in recruitment, you probably won't trust what I say in terms of how wonderful MBDA is as a company to work for. So we're joined here by 3 people today who can express that for us. So we've got Holly, we've got Katie, and we've got Matt. They're going to share their journey with us, their journey through MBDA, and tell us how they've grown from the first day they joined us, all the way up until about 5 years later to where they are now. So we'd love to encourage questions throughout this session. So we've got some questions for our panelists already, but we'd really encourage you to ask your own questions too and make the most of this session. So we will save those questions until the end, into a question and answer session. So please post them. We have also got some people from our team in the background. So if you have any general questions about MBDA, not just for our panelists, but about the business in general, please ask those as well while you've got the chance, and our team can work away in the background and answer those. So let's meet them, our panel, and discover their journey at MBDA. So I'm going to pass over to Katie first to introduce herself.
So, hi, I'm Katie. I've been at MBDA for 4.5, 5 years now. I joined in September 2018 as a graduate. I'm a manufacturing engineer working at MBDA Bolton, and I'm also technical coordinator at the moment for the early careers scheme for manufacturing engineering apprentices and graduates.
Brilliant, thanks Katie. Holly?
Thanks, Elsie. Hi, everyone. My name's Holly. I'm a principal systems engineer here. I also joined the grad scheme about 5 years ago now. So I did 2 years on the scheme, and then since then I've been working for about 2.5 years in a variety of technology projects and kind of research areas across the business.
Wonderful, thanks Holly. And last but not least, Matt, welcome.
Thanks, Elsie. Yeah, so my name is Matt. I'm the Simulation and Experimentation Proving Lead. Like Katie and Holly, I joined in 2018 as a grad, so I've been here just under 5 years. I've done various work in sort of trials, integration, hands-on test across a range of programs. And currently I lead the sort of test integration, verification and validation work for our simulation and emulation products. I'm also the technical coordinator for my function, which is ISV, Integration and Systems Validation.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for introducing yourselves. We're going to get straight into the swing of things. So we're going to fire some questions at you and get going. So the first question, I'm really interested to hear from you guys about what you were looking for before you actually joined MBDA in terms of your development. So prior to joining us, what were those kind of priorities that you were searching for a company that you were going to join? So Matt, I'm going to head to you first, if that's all right, and ask for your answer on that.
Brilliant. So I did a university degree, and I guess what I was looking for was a place that would take the skills and the knowledge and the mindset that I'd learned at university and translate that into the workplace. They're similar, sort of. There's lots of crossover between university and workplace, but there's also big differences. And I guess really that was sort of both the formal development opportunities, workshops, training courses, things like that, but also the more general and sort of informal development. And I think a lot of that's about the development culture, which is something that's perhaps hard to judge online or from a website. But definitely once I sort of came for my interview and when I joined on my pre-joining day, I really liked the feel of MBDA and thought that was the right place.
Brilliant, thanks, Matt. Katie, how do you feel about that, your development prior to MBDA? What were you looking for?
Yeah, so similarly, I'd just come from university and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I looked into MBDA and sort of knew one or two people who worked here. They said it was a really good company. I knew I wanted to do engineering and something technical. I enjoyed the manufacturing side of things when I was at university. And yeah, so I sort of thought I'd give it a go. I liked the idea that I could move around and develop myself in that technical role, but also there seemed to be a lot of focus on personal development as well and professional development, which has proven to be true. So luckily I picked well.
Amazing, thanks, Katie. You're probably in the same boat as lots of people as well, kind of not really sure on what you want to do. So that's really cool to hear. Holly, I'll pass over to you.
Thanks. So yeah, before I joined MBDA, I did a physics degree at university. So my background isn't in engineering. It wasn't really something I've been heavily involved in before joining the company. And when I was at university, as I'm sure a lot of universities do, they have loads of careers fairs and kind of pushing people into STEM and looking at kind of what you want to do after you leave. So I kind of took that on board and I thought, well, what direction do I want to go in when I graduate? I want to do something that I can use my skills and the knowledge in. I've spent the past 4 years studying, but I also really love, getting out and about, doing kind of travel, having kind of more flexibility in my day-to-day job. I don't want to just sit behind a desk all day. So I thought, well, I applied for some kind of years in industry and some summer internships as a kind of starting point for trying to find out what kind of development opportunities were out there. And I did an internship at MBDA, and I think that really helped me realize that in MBDA and also across like aerospace and defense industry in general, it was an environment that I wanted to be in, and it kind of met the things that I was hoping for in terms of my development and using some of the kind of skills that I'd learned at uni. So yeah, that's kind of where my headspace was at when I was kind of leading up to joining MBDA.
Brilliant, thank you. What a great start. So I'm going to head to the next question, and that is how has your experience the last 5 years lived up to your expectations, I guess? So those expectations that you maybe had before or just when you joined, how has your whole experience lived up to those? So Holly, I'm going to head to you first, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. So I guess building on what I just said, as a kind of starting point, it definitely, without doubt, has given me an opportunity to use the knowledge I have, but also apply it to different kind of applications in the kind of technology world, and in particular defense world, which is not something specific that I had kind of experienced at university. But But I also think it's really ticked the box in terms of personal development. I've seen and kind of experienced opportunities to move around and move up in the business as a whole, and I've really enjoyed the journey I've been on across both the grad scheme, across the different placements I had the chance to do, but also beyond that. There's been a lot of kind of exciting but challenging times over the past year. I've recently moved into a new role, but I think I've always kind of had the support network around me from my manager and my team, and that's really what I mean about in the personal development side. It's really exceeded my expectations of what I could have hoped for in terms of support. And one of the other main things I really like about working in the kind of supportive environment here in particular is that we're really encouraged to think about our development and voice that with our kind of managers in our department. You know, there are opportunities out there for training courses to kind of do shadowing and move around the company, and also just kind of guide your development and kind of think about where you want to be in 1, 2 or 5 years time, for example. And if you're kind of driven and you have a particular career path in mind, then I'd really encourage you to reflect on where you want to be, both personally and professionally, and kind of see how MBDA or other companies can give that to you.
Amazing, thank you, Holly. Matt, do you agree with that? How do you feel about expectations versus reality, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense and sort of resonates with what my experience has been. I feel, in a way, I can look back at my sort of 5 years or so far and split it up into sort of 2 years on the grad scheme, when there were loads of opportunities, technically, but also sort of from a business perspective, professional, personal, career-wise, you know, doing a variety of things. And that's all very well and good for a sort of a career, like early career scheme, sort of a structured 2 years. But then the question is, well, once you come off that, what does it look like day to day? And I think I've been pleasantly surprised with how much development is still pushed and encouraged for all employees, not just those who are sort of on a formal scheme. And there's still continued training opportunities. There's, you know, we have yearly development one-to-ones with our managers when we're encouraged to really think about questions and look at what our development areas we want, what areas the business needs, what areas we want to grow in, how can we marry them up. I've had opportunities to keep training, but also to sort of lead various bits of work. I've had an opportunity to lead a trial last year, integrating something onto a helicopter, which was really interesting and good for my development. As a technical coordinator, that means I'm sort of helping the grads in our function to find the right areas and make sure they're developing the right skills themselves. So that's given me a different experience, lots of, sort of people skills, leadership, perhaps more, maybe sort of soft skills and helping others develop too. And I think sort of one thing that's really helped me recently is I've been, last year I knew that I'd been enjoying my job, my role, but I was sort of looking for the next challenge. And I was having a conversation with my manager about that and where to go, and I had a function, and they were really supportive of that. They have sort of found me a new role in an area that I didn't think I would necessarily want to go in when I left university. I sort of left university thinking I really wanted to do aerodynamics for the rest of my life, and now I do a lot of sort of simulation software side of things. So it's different, but actually they were really supportive in that and helped me get into that role, and are now giving me opportunities to continue developing the skills I need for this new role.
Amazing, thanks, Matt. I think you've both touched on something personal and professional. They're quite separate things, but it's important that a company kind of encompasses both of those sides of things. And so it's really interesting how you both mentioned that your priorities are both personal and professional, and you feel that MBDA suits those both. So that's really good. Katie, we'll pass over to you.
Yeah, so I think I echo what Holly and Matt both said. I think when I started the company, I was very green, I guess. It was my first proper job. I was very, very shy. I didn't have a lot of confidence. And then throughout sort of the almost 5 years I've been here, I've had that ability to really develop myself as an engineer, worked with some fantastic people who, took me into their wing, mentored me, really showed me the ropes. And again, the sort of personal development side of sending on courses where you have to stand up in a theatre and give a presentation to people, as we all have done on the grad scheme, which was my worst nightmare at the time, and now I'm doing things like this, so it's obviously worked. and that opportunity for new challenges. I think my worst nightmare would be a job where I was bored and I didn't want to come to work in the morning. And any time I've ever started feeling like, you know what, I'm getting a bit bored in this role, all I've had to do is go and talk to my manager or talk to the head of our function and let them know, and they'll find me development opportunities and different things. And things like my technical coordinator role came out of those conversations. It wasn't something I was actively looking for or knew I even wanted to do. But having those conversations, that I was looking to make that next step, I was looking for what I could improve on next. That's how it came about, and that's, you know, off the graduate scheme. And I think that is important, that it's not you're an ECP or an experienced hire and we treat you differently. Everyone is very much has the same opportunities to develop and improve themselves.
Brilliant, thanks, Katie. We're going to head through to the next question, and this is kind of a follow-on question. So I'm going to ask, out of all of your experiences that you've had while you've been at MBDA, is there one thing, this is going to be super hard, is there one thing that you kind of can pinpoint that you would say has had the greatest impact on you? So is there one thing that you can highlight that has really kind of made a difference to your experience here so far? Matt, I'm going to throw it over to you. That's okay.
Okay. Yeah. So I think looking back, one of the most helpful things have been two of the residential courses we did on the grad scheme, and sorry, that's two things, not one. So one of them was very much we called it GRA. I think it's changed for the current grads, but essentially it's looking at sort of wider workplace and professional and personal skills, things like influencing, persuading, presenting. The second one was one called Technical Foundation Course 2, which was looking again at sort of how MBDA develops our products and the product life cycle. And what was really good about both of them was it was sort of a residential week away from your day job, so you didn't have to worry about what you sort of emails were doing. You could leave your laptop away, but they gave you lots of sort of material, but then loads and loads of chances to practice. And I'm a really big believer that practice makes perfect. Sports teams practice, singers practice, musicians. If you go to a theatre, they've practiced and practiced. We should be doing the same in the workplace. So having opportunities to practice in classrooms. On one of them, we practiced actually in a real world sort of practice project, and that really gave me loads of opportunities to learn about myself and how I react in different situations, and therefore what I need to look out for, what I need to develop, and some of the skills I want to work on.
Nice one. Matt, that sounds like a dream, having a week away from a laptop. Probably just to everyone on the call as well. Katie, I'm going to pass over to you.
Yeah, so I think moving to my final placement on the grad scheme, which is the team I'm currently in, had a massive impact. The timing of it meant that I was joining in March 2020, and about a week later, everyone got sent home. And yeah, we were all remote working because of the pandemic. However, a skeleton crew essentially were brought back in to MBDA Bolton to keep the factory running. So I went from being the new person on the team to a week later being one of two engineers in the team having to keep everything going. I think at that point my team had more confidence in my abilities than I did, but it was weirdly actually a very good experience. I had that sort of initial safety net taken away. I was working 12-hour shifts 3 days a week with minimal support. And yeah, the team had the faith that I can do it, and that sort of sink or swim moment, I guess, made me realise that I actually had more of the technical ability than I probably thought I did. And luckily, yeah, my manager saw that and kind of put me in that position where I really just had to trust my own abilities and trust the team I was working with. And it was a good icebreaker because you were stuck with people you didn't know for 12 hours, so you had to get to know everyone. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's hard. Stepping outside of your comfort zone, I guess. You try and stay there as much as possible, and in that moment, it was not possible for you at all. Holly, can you follow on from that?
Those excellent points. One of the things I was reflecting on is kind of over the past 5 years. Something that's really positively impacted me is kind of all the different opportunities that are kind of presented to us. I'm not just talking about the grad scheme, but as we were saying, beyond that, it's very much about how you can continue to develop. So, for example, sometimes you're just really busy. You've got a busy working day. You think, oh, I'll come back to that opportunity later, or that presentation later, or oh, that sounds like a good trip, but maybe I don't have time for that. I think taking an opportunity to get involved in things to help your development. So, for example, if you're on the graduate scheme, trying to branch out and do different placements in different areas of the business. For example, 6 months after I joined the business in engineering, I decided I wanted to move to London and do the kind of politics placement in the London office, completely kind of away from my original discipline. I then came back to engineering, but even now, 4 years later, that has been an instrumental part of how I learned about the wider area of the business, how we interact with people external to the company. It really helps set the context for the kind of defence and the wider industry that we work in. Some other kind of examples would be things like attending events, presenting at conferences, doing a lot of travel during kind of different roles, or just really working with your team, building up your network, and both professionally and personally. So one of the other things I really like about MBDA on that opportunities thread is the fact that we have what we call kind of social networks. So not only is MBDA interested in your professional development, but I find that they value your personal and well-being development as much. So some examples, like we have a photography, kind of 3D printing, and then through to like neurodiversity, EDI. So all these different networks and all these fantastic kind of interests that different people have. And that's really what I mean about getting stuck in and involved with opportunities means different things to different people. But you'll kind of look back and you'll think, wow, I'm really glad that I got stuck in and I just did it. Don't think about it too much. Just put yourself out there. And you don't regret the chances you take. You tend to regret the ones that you don't take.
Thanks, Holly. That's inspirational. I like that. I want that on my wall. I want it on a poster on my wall. Thank you so much. So we're going to move across to the next question. And this is kind of another taking a look back at your younger self. So say like the last 5 years, if you were to advise your younger self, what would you tell them to kind of make the most out of their development? And when you're thinking of the things you've done, how do you feel MBDA has supported your development? So kind of that step back, advising your younger self, and also thinking about how MBDA has supported those areas too. So Matt, I'm going to go to you first.
Brilliant. It's a really good question. So I was sort of having a think, what would I go back and tell myself when I joined the company? I think I brought it down to three things. I think first of all, realizing the importance of owning your development. Holly really touched on it last, sort of making the most of the opportunities that come your way. And ultimately your development is your responsibility. There are loads of opportunities that are given, but it's your responsibility to make the most of them and to take your career in the direction you want. So I think it took me about a year to work out that I need to be proactive. I need to go and find these opportunities, and that way I'll get the most out of myself. Another thing, practice makes perfect. I think I've said it in my previous answer that I love being able to practice skills in the right setting so we can implement it in the real world. And I'm a big believer that if it's not just about looking at a PowerPoint on the screen, but it's about having opportunities to lead things, to try things out, and opportunities to fail really, and learn from your mistakes, because that's how we get better. And that happens in classrooms, but it also happens in day-to-day jobs. And having people around you who are willing to let you have a go at things, let you make a mistake, and then come alongside you and say, actually, look, this is how we could do it better, and having the right environment to be able to make those mistakes so that we can do it better in the future, and that we're always learning and developing. And I think that applies whether you've been here 1 year, 5 years, or 50 years. Everybody's learning. Everybody's still got things they can grow. And finally, I think it's like development is really important, as we've been talking about. But don't neglect your day job. And I think particularly as you sort of deliver on your day-to-day responsibilities and your tasks, you learn by doing them, but also people start to see you that you're trustworthy. They start to see your skills and things come through, and that actually opens more doors. So as you focus on delivering those tasks and responsibilities, that does sort of help you progress up the future. So I think those are the three things I'd tell myself.
Brilliant, thanks, Matt. I'm going to hand straight over to Holly and ask you exactly the same question.
Thanks, Elsie. Yeah, I really resonate what Matt said there. It's a really good points. I think building on that, we mentioned it before, there's going to be times where you feel like you're pushed outside your comfort zone. You feel like you've got a million things going on at once. You're trying to focus on your day job, and we're talking a lot about development and training. I don't think any of us are saying you need to turn up on day one with a 10-year career plan. Yeah, I think something that's really kind of helped me, and I would look back on, is everyone starts from somewhere. So for example, you get given like a new project or move into a new job, new role. Take it slow and steady. There are resources and people around you to support you, and ultimately you really can learn anything and achieve what you put your mind to. I've moved around a lot in the company and touched on a lot of different projects and research areas, and I've never hit a complete brick wall. There's always something that you can do to support yourself, and I find that development doesn't need to be a separate thing. It doesn't need to be a separate book or a separate training course. As Matt said, it's very much an intrinsic part of just what you will find yourself doing, and you'll look back a month, a year, 2 years, and you'll think, oh, I've just kind of matured and really kind of developed how I would have approached that particular problem, how I would have approached that particular opportunity. And those are the kind of valuable experiences that you kind of gain. And I think that's definitely something that I reflect on and would kind of reassure my younger self, and to anybody who's leaving university, for example, or is moving into a completely different industry, not just from university, that you just go in, just jump in, nurture the relationships with your team, in your meetings, things like grabbing coffee, if that's what you like doing. Those things are also really valuable, and just kind of relax into it.
Yeah, the same goes, Holly, doesn't it? For whether you're early careers or whether you're further along in your career, you're in the middle and you're kind of looking to make a change. So I think all of your points kind of make the same noises to a wide range of different people. Katie, do you have anything to add at all on that question?
Yeah, I mean, both Matt and Holly made really good points. I think one of the things when I look back, especially my first year at MBDA, as I mentioned before, I was very, very shy. I'm naturally very much an introvert. I was very conscious about asking people for help and asking people questions, because I didn't want them to think I was nagging them or bothering them. And then something I sort of realized as I moved around and as I gained a bit more experience, that people are just genuinely happy to help you. And I'd much rather someone ask me a question than sit there and not do anything for 2 days because they were too worried about it. So I think looking back, changing jobs at any point, there's going to be things you don't know, because no one knows everything, unfortunately. And asking those questions and really using your network, using your team, it'll mean you get the most out of your career anywhere, I think, not just at MBDA, but further afield as well.
Brilliant, thank you. We've kind of done a lot of looking back, so I'm interested to kind of take a jump forward, look forward to the future, and throw another question out to you guys and say, what's next for you? You've kind of introduced us to your role, you've told us what you do, what you've done in the past. So what's next in terms of your development? What are you planning? Is there anything you haven't even kind of considered yet, but you're thinking of going along that path? I'm going to throw it straight to Holly and ask you that question. So what does the future look like for you, and what does your progression look like as well?
Yeah, it's a tough question. So I recently moved into a new role on a different program, completely different to what I was doing for the past year or so. And I just, we had a discussion around what the role is, what the day-to-day responsibilities are. But as important in that discussion was, where is this role going to lead me personally, professionally over the next 1, 2, or 5 years? And like I said before, this doesn't need to be a massive thing that consumes your kind of everyday thinking about career plans. But that wider awareness of not only how the project and how the day-to-day job is moving forward, but how you are moving forward as an individual. And I think, so for example, my roadmap for the next year is I really want to gain some experience in hardware testing, kind of design and technical proving experience. It's not something that I've done massively before. Going back to university, not something that I did at university. In terms of kind of software development, I've got a few summer training courses booked in to help with some technical and managerial aspects of the role. I fully admit I don't know everything about this new role, but that's not something that should be kind of holding me back. I'm trying to kind of throw myself in there, take the opportunities, as I said, that are around me. And like I said, you can learn pretty much everything. And people will definitely help you. I really echo what Katie said about if people ask me questions like on their first date, my first thought is, oh yeah, I want to help this person. But when I started, I was not very confident. I was quite shy and quiet, and I used to get really nerve-wracked about that kind of stuff. But it's never something that on the other end of that, I've thought badly about someone and really just trying to help them. So it's really just trying to embody that and keep helping people in the business and then helping myself in this new role is kind of what I'll be doing over the next year or two, I think. In MBDA. Yeah.
Thanks, Holly. I'm going to head straight over to Matt. Same question to you, Matt. What's the future look like for you?
Yeah, so similar to Holly, I sort of started the new role. I started in February, and I got a lot to learn about in this role. I think particularly I'm now sort of leading a small team of people. I haven't done much people management, so much leadership before, so that's a bit alien to me, and I've got a lot to learn on that front. I'm also much more now in sort of a digital world, and if you say digital, everyone gets very excited because it's the future, but nobody really knows what that means. So sort of technically, one thing I'm looking forward to is starting to speak to people and understand what does digital mean for them, and how can we bring that together in what I'm interested in, which is how do we go about proving and testing and integrating and demonstrating that our products work using digital facilities to sort of improve the speed that we can do that with, the quality we can do that with, the data we're using, and ultimately, I guess, save the customer money. So I guess one thing from a sort of more personal professional development, that people management, and then one bit about that more technical around the sort of digital future and what's that going to look like in my business area.
Thanks, Matt. I like this, looking into the future. It's like we've got a crystal ball. I love it. Yeah. Katie, how are you feeling about the future? What does it look like for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think coincidentally, I've also changed roles recently. So I'm still within my team. So I've got that sort of the technical side of things are okay, but I've moved into a team leader role. So I guess the immediate future is figuring out management and people management side of things. What type of manager am I? What kind of impact do I want to make on the team? But then it's constantly looking forward to that next step. So updating personal development plans and things like that I use to get to my current position. Do I want to step in to become my manager in a couple of years and look at what that next step thing is? Not in any massive rush, because I'd like to figure out my current job first. But I think that just constantly keeping on top of things and figuring out what I like, what I don't like, and where's that going to take me.
Thanks, Katie. I'm going to throw a question straight back to you as well on that. Do you feel that MBDA kind of understands that position that you're in and can help you get to where you need to be? So do you feel like your managers, for example, are supported of that position? Do you feel you have the right support network to discuss that and not kind of have to worry about it by yourself about the future? There are people to share that with.
Yeah, I think definitely. I went to a couple, when I decided I kind of wanted to take the next step in my career, I went to a couple of different people. So I went to my line manager initially. I went to my functional lead as well, the head of the manufacturing engineering function, and just sort of had honest, frank conversations. It wasn't, hi, manager, I want to leave your team. It was more, this is where I think I'm at. These are the gaps that I've identified that I have in my current professional world at the moment. Do you agree? Do you think I'm not as good at certain things than I think I am? Or, what can I do to do that? And everyone I've spoken to has been really, really helpful. I've never had anyone reject a quick 5-minute chat or a longer meeting if I needed it. And it is I think we probably all get told in all our development reviews that we have, it's in your own hands. If you want a personal development plan, set one up. And I think it's been really, really helpful. And yeah, everyone's very, very keen, I think, to help people progress if they want it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Katie. So we've asked you loads of questions, and we've also got questions flooding in from the audience too. So if you guys are happy to, I'm going to throw those questions to you again, just so that the audience have a real good chance to understand MBDA from their point of view. So the first question that we've had asked is from Michael. It's from Michael, and he said, "Are you able to move around, move to different roles, different projects as your experience grows, or are you typically siloed into one role?" So I'm going to ask Matt if that's okay to give us an answer to that question.
Well, I hope the example of all three of us having recently changed roles is a sort of answers that by showing you what we've done. But in particular, I think on the grad scheme, you do 4 6-month rotations, which are 3 of which are in your business area, but you sort of see different areas of your business, again, which helps you understand, if I want to stay in this business area, what's my particular focus, what skills do I want to use, what team do I want to be in. And you get to do one outside of your area, we call an external placement. So that, like Holly said, that she went and did a politics placement in London. And that's a really good opportunity to get that wider picture, and also perhaps try something different that you wouldn't normally try, take a bit of a risk, because you can come back to your normal day job almost afterwards. So you do get loads of opportunities on the grad scheme, but yeah, as you keep going through the company, there are loads of opportunities left. And I think, as Katie said, people are very pro sort of developing and moving MBDA. Nobody sort of, when you sit down to someone to have a conversation saying, I'm thinking about what's next for me, nobody's going to bite your head off and tell you, no, stay where you are for the next 5 years. They want to sort of understand, okay, why do you want to move? What skills do you want to do? Where do you want to go? How can we help that happen? How can we make sure that we are still meeting the sort of the business needs and the things you're doing day to day? How are we going to manage that transition? So yeah, I think there are loads of opportunities to keep moving at MBDA and keep growing and developing and changing roles.
Brilliant, thanks, Matt. Yeah, I think the answer in that sense is not to move around to different companies. I guess there's so many opportunities within one company. MBDA is a huge company that allows you to explore the whole of it if you'd like to. And so I think that's really important, that we obviously want to keep as many people, and that's why we have such a great culture, I'd say, because we've got lots of people that are happy, they're rotating in their jobs, which is a nice feeling. We've got another question by Stuart. Thank you for your questions. They're really brilliant, actually. I'm going to ask the second part of the question to you, Holly, if that's okay, just because I think we've kind of covered where you guys will see yourself in the coming years or in the future. So how do you tackle challenges in your day-to-day role? So Holly, I'm going to ask you that, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. That kind of speaks to me, because I find that there are some challenges. We've all talked about moving to different roles, but even when you've just joined the company on the grad scheme, there are some things that, for example, you just don't know how to do, new processes, new ways of working. One of the main things to help you overcome that is talking to people, even if it's kind of just introductory stuff right through to really complex technical kind of programmatic things. Just kind of understanding kind of where the resources are that can help you, talking to people, kind of listening is also a really key thing, like active listening and actively asking questions. There's no such thing as a bad question, genuinely. And that's really, one way that you can kind of, overcome some challenges that you have. there are also other separate things, such as kind of courses or kind of separate mentoring schemes that we offer as well at MBDA, which can more broadly help you if you want to kind of look at behaviours or competencies and skills and things like that. But day to day, working in a kind of collaborative environment, even if you're at home or on the site, there's always someone you can ask. There's always ways that you can find out information, and always people to help you tackle the challenges that you have.
Great, thanks, Holly. Katie, we've got a dodgy light bulb, haven't we? Sorry about that. Yes. I think this was also Stuart, and he's also asked about the culture. Sorry, Stuart, if you didn't ask this, but the question is, what's the culture like at MBDA? So, Matt, I'm going to ask you this question about culture. Obviously, we've got our company values, our 5 core company values, which I think set a really good kind of base of our culture. But what does it actually feel like? What is the culture like?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think it's one I asked when I was looking at where to apply and where to join, because you can read company websites and see all the exciting products they make or all the things they say they value. But it's just a website. It's hard to get a feel of what actually it's like to work at that place. So certainly my experience of MBDA has been, it's got a culture that really values people. And I think that comes through in a lot of things. I think, first of all, the company recognises that, people are the key to delivering what we do. Actually, people have the expertise, the knowledge, the skills, the mindsets to overcome problems, to be able to find new ways to do things. So first of all, that's really true. And there's a very sort of open culture. There's lots of opportunities to talk to people, whether it's someone doing a very similar role to you or someone doing something completely different. That idea of sort of trying to share knowledge and experiences with each other to help each other. And I think perhaps so culture's hard to pin down. Perhaps a little anecdote maybe sort of fleshes it out a little bit more. When we sort of hit COVID, all of a sudden, everybody was sent home apart from a few people who had to come onto site. It was a huge change. Big sort of IT changes, big cultural changes, ways we work. And one of the things our head of function did, so someone quite senior in the business, was put in a catch up every 2 weeks with the grads. And he didn't come in with an agenda. He just came and said, how are you guys doing? What's going well? What are you struggling with? What are the challenges? And I thought, if someone so high up is willing to make that time every 2 weeks to listen to sort of people, hierarchically fairly low down in the company, actually that shows how much he values his the grads and our development, and he wants us to keep us. And I sort of thought, well, I want to be working for someone like that and a company that encourages that sort of thing. So hopefully that sort of embodies that people focused culture, which is really where development comes from.
Absolutely. It's hard, isn't it? Because for people that aren't at MBDA, that are looking for potentially applying to us, they may not have been onto our sites. They may not have a feel for what it actually is like on our sites. And that makes it difficult. So, that kind of coffee culture, that catch-up culture, like being very close-knit kind of family culture almost. It can sound a bit strange to people when you're just explaining it if they haven't felt it for real. But I think it's a really good point, Matt, that people do really care here, that they're happy, they enjoy their jobs. And they do really care about the people that they work with and themselves too, about looking after themselves. So, thanks, Matt, for that. We've got a really good question as well in the chat about dynamic working. So obviously this is as you guys have touched on, it happened a lot after COVID, after people experienced the work from home situation. So someone has asked, tell us about dynamic working and how you make it work for you in your particular role. So if I can hand over to Holly first, that would be great. And then Katie, if you could just give us a sense of what dynamic working is like for you in manufacturing, that would also be great if that's possible. So Holly, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Elsie. So I work in the kind of systems engineering world. So that's typically kind of in the office or visiting suppliers, etc. So a bit different to what Katie will touch on. So from my perspective, dynamic working is about giving us the kind of power and flexibility to govern how and where and when we want to work. keeping in mind the needs of the kind of business and the day job. But the flexibility within that. So, for example, a lot of my colleagues do school run. A lot of them have kind of recurring appointments. And really now it's really the norm to just see kind of even visible things like blocking out your calendars or being available at certain times or being on site on certain days and at home on certain days. Personally, for me in my role, so what I do is I kind of like to plan out my future week and what's coming up. We have a really kind of flexible ad hoc desk booking tool, so you can really plan around which office you want to be in. So my team is split across Bristol and Stevenage, for example, and I can kind of go and work there. I can work here on a need by need basis. I like to work from home a couple of times a week, so I make sure I balance out the specific stuff I need to do in the office physically on site. I kind of plan out and structure my days around that so that I can make sure I am progressing and meeting what I need to be doing on a week by week and month by month basis. But I also absolutely feel like I'm in control and have flexibility of what I do with my kind of working hours around that, and in particular on those days where I can be at home. Something I think also kind of has helped me when I've had kind of appointments outside of work, or I've needed to do some traveling kind of across the country. There's real flexibility in being able to work on the move, if you like, or from different locations. It doesn't necessarily matter as long as you're doing some work and you're meeting what you need to do. But yeah, I feel like there's total flexibility, and I'm really happy with the way that my experiences have been over the past few years, even as I've moved through quite a few different roles since the grad scheme. I've never had a kind of problem or a struggle or had kind of come up against my kind of department or my manager around the way that I'm doing things. I really enjoy the way that it's worked since COVID.
Great, thanks Holly. That covers that question really well. But Katie, I'm going to pass it to you in terms of manufacturing, because obviously dynamic working has to work for the business as well as it does work for the individuals. So how does it work for you where you sit?
Yes, so in Bolton it is quite split. We have the operators on the shop floor, and obviously they can't work from home, can't take a missile home to build a new living room, unfortunately. So they are still in predominantly 4 days a week. We do have different shift patterns though, so some will work on nights or 12 hours and things, but predominantly most people are in your standard 37-hour week. And they have core hours, so that's starting anytime between 7 and half 9, and then finishing after 3:36 Monday to Thursday, or 11:36 on a Friday. It is that precise. So obviously for them it is a bit more scheduled because it has to be. For the likes of manufacturing engineering, test engineering, logistics, because our primary role is to support and facilitate the build of products, then we do tend to come on site more, and we have the ability to work from home a bit, so it depends on which team you're in. A couple of my team will work maybe 1, maybe 2 days a week from home, but it is sort of expected that you're on site when they need you. But we still do get dynamic time, so if you want to work longer on a Monday and shorter on a Thursday, you can do that. You can still work from home. I think that is a massive benefit that everyone having to go home during COVID gave us. Beforehand, we were rubbish with, a meeting you had to be on site, everyone had to be in. Meetings across sites were a nightmare because everyone had to travel and do expenses. Whereas now, obviously, you've got things like Skype and Zoom and stuff, so that works a lot better. But yeah, so it does vary. I think on Bolton we do tend to be on site a bit more than others, but obviously we just have to be. And similarly, if you're working on sort of the more secret information, you have to be on certain networks. You'll probably have to be on site for that, but it all just works around what is best for the company and the person. Like Holly mentioned, school runs are great. People will log on for an 8 o'clock startup meeting at home, and then they'll rock up to the office at 9 after they drop the kids off and things like that. So it just gives you a bit more flexibility.
Brilliant. Thank you, Katie. I think that gives us a really kind of comprehensive view of dynamic working at all the sites, I guess. I've got an extra question in here. I've probably got time for 2 more questions quickly before we wrap up. So can I throw it to Holly or Katie? What is it like working as a woman in the defence industry? Because this is quite a topical question. So I'll throw it to you guys. Who wants to go first?
I think I've really enjoyed it so far. You are still in a minority, but compared to other companies that I've seen or know people who work at, we do have a much better gender split, I think, at MBDA, and it is getting a lot better. I think I've been really fortunate in essentially every team I've been working in. My manager or their manager has been a female working here, so we have a lot of visibility. We're very big on like the gender equality, and we have various networks and stuff to really push that and raise awareness and things like that. So I think in the defence industry as a whole, there is a way to go with getting more women in the industry. I think diversity of any kind is just really important. Everyone thinks differently, so the more people from different backgrounds and who think differently you can get in a company, the better. But I do think, and I'm not being paid to say it, but I do genuinely think MBDA is really good with that. And you know, I've been really lucky. I've never personally had any issues. And if I know that if anything did come up, where there are any issues, I'm in an environment where that will be sorted out swiftly, and it's, you know, zero tolerance on any kind of discrimination, no matter whether it's gender, sexuality, ethnicity, anything like that. So yeah, brilliant. I think MBDA is a great place for that.
Thank you, Katie. Holly, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Katie said. There's never been any kind of negative experience for myself. I feel like I've had so many opportunities, like we talked about, like we've all said, to move around and take on the roles and go for the roles that I want to, without any kind of thoughts behind kind of differences between that. My experience over the past few years in MBDA is that they're really kind of on the ball with setting up things like kind of equality, diversity, inclusion networks, pride, recognising neurodiversity differences between people, parents and carers. So not only women, but women in those categories, but also more broadly, kind of supporting the differences between people. But yeah, I think women in industry, in engineering, in STEM, right back through to university is obviously a topic that is on everybody's minds. And I think MBDA is moving in the right steps and focusing on the right things to give women in defence and in the company, visibility, and across the industry as well. It's moving in a positive direction.
Brilliant. Yeah, and something to add to that is that with a company like MBDA, which is so vast, there's so many different areas that you can go down. So, for example, I'm in early careers recruitment. I work in HR. Katie's in manufacturing. There's engineering. There's HR. There's project management. There's so many different types of roles. So that can suit so many different types of people. So it's really important to kind of keep options open in that sense. So we haven't got any more time for any questions, I'm afraid, but thank you so much for sending us all of your questions, because there's some brilliant ones in there. Do catch any of us on LinkedIn if you did have any further questions to ask, especially myself. I'm more than happy to answer any further questions on LinkedIn. But thank you again for joining us. I'm just going to ask for a final kind of like closing comment from Holly, Katie and Matt. So I'm going to throw a question to you, that is, for anyone who's sat on this webinar right now, what is the one thing that you're going to tell them to do after this, once they've logged off? If they're thinking about applying for MBDA, what would you say? Something short and sweet that you can just give as advice to anyone who's sat on here. So Matt, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say my experience has been working at MBDA primarily, but I've absolutely loved it. There's a reason I'm sort of still here after 5 years and planning the rest of my career is sort of the next few years to be here anyway. It's a really great place to work, and as I said, I think it's because it prioritises people, which is why I want to work here, and I'm really enjoying working here so far.
Thank you, Matt. Katie?
Yeah, I think, just sort of go for it. You've got nothing to lose. We clearly all like it here. So yeah, like I said, if ask people questions, drop people a message on LinkedIn, and if you're thinking about it, yeah, just go for it and see what happens.
Brilliant, thank you. Last but not least, Holly, any final closing comment to anyone sat here wondering whether to apply for us?
Yeah, I think just, you know, if you have an interest and you have the passion, just go for it. Speaking to the audience who maybe, you know, aren't at university but kind of 4, 5, 6 years or experience already, yeah, just go for it. There's mobility, people mobility within the company. I think there was a question about kind of changing roles during ongoing projects or after projects. Both. It's real kind of promotion of kind of people, like mobility in the company. So just go for it. Find an environment and a role that you like doing, and then you can work on your development from there. People will support you every step of the way.
Brilliant, thank you. Great closing words, thank you. Thank you, Holly, Katie and Matt, for joining us today. Thank you for your time out of your day jobs. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I hope the audience have too. So audience, thank you again for joining us as well. Thank you for your time. I hope you've managed to grab some lunch while you've been listening to us. We do have some more events like this. So if you did want to find out a bit more, we've got some different topics. We've got an event on the 17th and on the 24th of this month. So please head over to our events page on our website, or head over to LinkedIn, our MBDA LinkedIn. You can find more information about those events there. And we would love to see you there as well. And any questions that you didn't manage to get asked today, hopefully you can ask in those future events. So from MBDA, from the 4 of us, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of the day.